Hello, how are you? Hold on, do I call you Dr. Leon Vanstone? Like that's such
I
a
I normally go by Leon. It's
Leon.
absolutely fine.
So listen, it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you. And first of all, to have you as an NFT. Like you have no idea. So psyched to have you as an NFT.
It's my pleasure to be here. I'm really excited by a lot of the Web3 stuff and a lot of the community building
Uh-huh.
that it really encourages. So actually, I'm happy to be part of this sort of Web3 piece and this wonderful new idea. And I hope it really goes somewhere because I love the idea. So I
That's
should be
awesome.
I should be thanking you. That's what I'm saying.
So hold on, you get to tell people I'm an NFT now, right? I'm an
No, right?
NFT.
Yeah.
All right.
Who has
Yeah.
that?
So let's get started in terms of our audience, getting to know
Mhm.
you a little bit. So my first question for you, that you work on so many projects. If you had a dream project you wanted to work on, tall, big, and wide, what would that project look like at this
Yeah. I mean
moment?
that's always a really always a really interesting question. I would say I have two goals in all of my life. A third one is a stretch, but we'll get to that later. So two main goals: I want to change the world, and I want to make it better. That's it.
Hmm.
That's all I want to do. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do that, and that's part of what attracted me to rocket science, of course, because it is both a literal vehicle, but also, a figurative vehicle to the future. It's an idea. I watched perhaps too much Star Trek as a kid, but it's an idea that we could go out into space and we could find all of the things that we need for everyone, and we could all live relatively comfortable lives. Um, and so the projects I'm really going to be interested in are the ones that are going to have potential for really big impact, the ones that are going to have the potential to change the world. Um, I don't mind what form that comes in. Like obviously my formal background in sciences is as a rocket scientist, right? But there's also this really big piece of me that's this storyteller. And there's this, the human technology nexus is this place where technology and societies come together and are constantly reformed by each other. It is people and institutions that build tools. With technology, those tools go out into the world and reshape entire societies and institutions. And then in turn, those societies reshape the people and institutions who build new tools. So there are, and NFTs are a great example of a brand new tool that's going out into the world. And you're already seeing how, it's starting to reshape the way large groups and large institutions do things. So those are the areas I'm really interested in. And those are the areas that I'm great at sort of telling that story. And it is important to tell a story, right? It's not enough to communicate something succinctly. You have to do it in a compelling way. And that's the good communication just means you said what you wanted to say. But when you story tell, then you do so in a compelling way. And so that's sort of where the intersection of my skill set is and the work I want to do lives.
Mm.
And my third goal, by the way, if anyone is interested out there that's listening, is I really want to die in orbit of Jupiter. So I don't know if it's a project for today. Give me a few decades, but if anyone can help me with that, hit me up, okay?
I love that. So let's talk about like what is the moment you're most proud of so far in your life? Tell me about that.
Yeah, a sort of a strange mix of perhaps personal and professional pride. So I founded a rocket lab at the university I used to work for.
Mhm.
I am a recovering academic,
Yeah.
and it was I of course didn't found it in the typical way you would found a lab at a university. I came at it from a rather unusual angle from the point of view of the university, and the lab did really well. Largely, I think, because it was different. And the lab, if anyone is interested, called the Texas Rocket Engineering Lab, and that lab very quickly grew to be a 250 person, largely student driven organization, and they have been building rockets. Um, and a large part of my work with them then was to really facilitate them to do the work. I spent relatively little time actually building any rockets. I spent most of my time running around trying to stop the university health and safety people from having heart attacks, trying to stop the children from blowing themselves up, and trying to keep everyone in this arrangement happy. And it taught me an incredible amount. But somewhat recently they did their first engine hot fire. And I don't know, it was almost like seeing your kid ride a bike for the first time or something. Like it wasn't especially hard to do from a technical perspective, but the organizational piece of getting a bunch of students to hot fire, to have enough discipline, enough rigor, and enough technical excellence to hot fire a rocket engine, that to me, it's not hard to teach one person to be good at a rocket, but to have a whole organization that does it, that for me was a really proud moment. And that was when I really realized that I wanted to go out into the world and help build organizations. It's not enough just to do one small piece. You have to build these bigger things that help, these tools that help, and institutions that can transform entire societies. And so that's where I really found my calling.
Wow. And what does your typical day look like right now?
Typical day. Well, I will say I have a newborn son, so he's a bit of a handful. He doesn't, I keep showing him my diary, he just doesn't care. But
you're like, your appointment is at 10 o'clock. No,
yeah, I'm you can't be awake now. I'm busy. Can you come on? So it obviously varies. Sometimes things get really dicey and you've just got to put the hours in. But on a standard day, what I like to do is have the day sort of split. So if there's a fair number of books and papers and some evidence that would suggest most people can do about 4 to 5 hours of really meaningful training, thought, whatever it is a day. And at that point, you kind of sort of fatigue your own brain out. And so I sort of try to structure the day to have sort of 4 to 5 days of some often unstructured time. Like, it's really easy to be in meetings all day long. And you can do that quite a lot because they're typically not too exhausting, or at least as an extrovert, they're not too exhausting. But I like to kind of reserve chunks of time to really sit and think about problems. And you can't, I mean, I know some people advocate for like 16-hour work days. I really question how meaningful most of that work is. And really, meaningful work doesn't, it's like humans aren't machines, right? It's not like I have a machine and I crank the handle on the machine, right? And bolts fall out of it and I sell the bolts. And if I crank the handle twice as fast, or I crank the handle twice as long, I get twice as much stuff, right? Humans don't work like that. Yes, I can send emails and do other fairly mindless stuff for 16 hours a day, right? You can. But if you want to do really meaningful work, the really difficult stuff, the really insightful stuff, I kind of challenge anyone to show me that it's possible to really do that continually for enormous periods of time. And in fact, I find the more I work crazy hours, almost the less creative I become, because you don't have time just to sit and to think. And so I'm sort of in a very luxurious place right now where I'm kind of starting some projects and wrapping some others up. And I actually have the time to really sit and think quite deeply about some of the things I care about, like the human technology nexus, like what my next ideas are going to be and where I want to go. And so I'm really grateful for that.
I love that. I love that. And I love that because, there's a trend happening with all of you guys, by the way, all my industry experts. I don't think there is a single one of you that have not said to me, I set aside time to do the deep work and think.
Yeah, exactly. The deep work.
And can I tell you something,
Sure.
and I can do this to
Love
you
to
as
hear it.
as a startup founder, scaling, it is probably the most difficult balance because I'm at my best actually when I have that time set aside to do the deep work and think, right? Because, I'm very nerdy that way. And I think that whenever I feel off balance, it's because I'm running the rat race and I'm not having that deep work time to do that incredible, interesting work. So that was just like a light bulb moment for
No,
me.
I really agree with that. And it wasn't, again, it was sort of something else someone else said to me, and then I started thinking about it and I'm like, oh no. And it's, the analogy is, right, but the deep, the deep thinking, the deep thought, the deep work, right? Have you ever seen a kid learning to ride a bike, and they've just gotten on it, and they're so obsessed with the front wheel that they stare at it and they ride straight into a bush, right? Because they're not looking where they're going, right?
Yeah.
And if you spend the whole time worried about what has to happen right now, you're not steering your organization, and it will just drift, or worse, be steered by someone else. And suddenly
Yeah.
you'll find yourself, and then at best, you're just relying on luck that you don't hit anything. At worst, it gives somebody else the opportunity to steal that organization. So,
So question for you. Did you know at 8 years old you would end up being a rocket scientist?
I did not know. And I won't lie. I'm like many things in life, certainly you have to show up and work hard, but more than anything, that my career path ended up being luck, right? I'd gone to university. I liked planes and rockets, right? But I mean, lots of kids do. And I ended up, at the time, I thought I was probably being a bit of an idiot for picking my entire career based off of the fact that I like planes and rockets when I went to do aerospace engineering. But it kind of panned through, right? Because it's a passion. It's something I cared about. And when I got to the end of university, I was kind of burnt out from uni. And I thought, this is ridiculous. These academics don't do anything. I'm going to go work in industry. And I got a job as a consultant. And it was probably one of the best and worst decisions I ever made in my life. It was some of the most miserable I've ever been. But at the same time, it really made me think, when times get difficult and tough, it's a great motivator for you to actually really think deeply and carefully about what you want and what you care about and the person you really want to be. And so for the 11 months that I did that, as I said, miserable, but also it really forced me to think about what I wanted. And I ended up actually going back to university. And at that point, I was like, I'll take any PhD I can find. And the PhD that I happened to get first was one studying hypersonics. So I did that. And then I happened to get a postdoc in the US. So I came and did this. And then that led me into, more of the sort of rocket science and the more hypersonics and everything else. And so by luck, really, it's not something you can plan for, you can try, and you can try to do things that help. You can't plan to be. I as an 8-year-old would have no idea. I as a 36-year-old have no idea how anyone else can do it. I know you can get involved. I know you can go and look for opportunities, like show up, help people, try to change things, and opportunities will appear to you, right? That's my experience of the world. Show up in the place you want to be and just start helping. And if you're useful and you're capable, which you will be eventually if you try enough, someone will take you up on something. But no, I had no idea. Honestly, I was going to be quite happy if I just went to university. That 8-year-old Leon would have been blown away, I think.
What do you think the 8-year-old Leon loves the most about you right now?
8-year-old Leon loves most about me right now. I don't know. 8-year-old Leon would probably have been blown away at the idea that I lived in another country. Because that wasn't really where I grew up. You were lucky if you left the town,
And where was that?
that was in glorious Reading, England.
Wow.
Which is not an especially aspiring places sometimes. It's gotten a lot better actually as I've gotten older. But and honestly, that I was a rocket scientist. I mean, my dad, I was lucky enough that my father would take us into London, and he would take me to the science museums, or the Science Museum in London, and just walk me around. And I'd walk around all day with my mouth open, I'm sure, like. And I remember on the 4th floor, I think it is, there's an entire room just stacked full of planes, and on the ground floor when you come in, there's a whole auditorium that's full of rockets, and it just blew me away. So the idea that they seem like magic. They just seem so complicated and far away from anything that any explanation my dad could give me.
And how old were you?
I was probably about 5 then.
Yeah.
That
So you know
memory I
what?
had.
Even though there was a distance, there was a shortening of the distance between you, science, and rockets, even though maybe you weren't consciously aware.
I had never thought of that, and yes, I mean, yeah, sure, right. I agree. When I was 5, they were magic, right? I was convinced. I remember my dad giving me answers, and I'm like, I don't understand. It has bits of matter, no, like, and then all this enormous fire comes off, and this rocket. No, that doesn't make any sense. This is magic. I was convinced. This is magic.
Yeah.
It's
So
the
you
only way.
chose magic in your life. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
chose right. Yeah, I choose magic. I'm a
You
magician.
choose
8-year-old me is like Leon is a magician.
magic.
He's a
and
wizard.
what and what do you think the 80-year-old version of you is most proud of right now about you?
I don't know. Thank
I
you.
can see the cat. It's
Yeah,
okay.
I know. She likes to sit in my lap. I don't know. I have this piece of advice I would often tell to the rocket kids, right? The kids in trouble, when they would ask me what should they do, where should they go, and I said, look, I try to have a 5-year plan about what I'm doing, but part of that plan is that in the next 5 years, I will be hopefully have grown enough to be such a different person that the plan, my current plan doesn't make sense, right? And if you sort of think about that 10,000 hours idea, right, about being an expert, yada yada, right, which I'm not necessarily glued to the idea, but it's a rough guide, right? That's about 10 years. If you do 4 to 5 hours of meaningful training a day, and it's 10,000 hours, it's about 10 years. And so you have the opportunity every 10 years, right? All of us do, to become a whole new person, go into a whole new career. I was an academic, and now I'm an entrepreneur, right? And then, what will I do 10 years from now? I really don't know. And so 80-year-old me, will have.
It's okay. She wants to be in the
I
interview.
know she's
Okay.
going to be 80-year-old me hopefully will look back on me and I hope be proud of the fact that I started this journey that was very true to myself. Like, I love rocket science. I love hypersonics. That area fascinates me. I really enjoyed working on it. And it was one of the hardest things I've done to actually to recognize that even though I had all this love for this topic, that for myself and my own goals, I needed to step away and to go and continue to grow myself personally and professionally in areas that weren't this specialty. Don't just deep dive down the rabbit hole. Really start to understand these areas, because I, in the back of my mind, there was always this niggly idea kind of eating away at me. I knew I wanted to change the world even before I could really say it so succinctly and make it better. And I had hoped through science I could do that. But there are instances it's possible, but change comes organizationally. You don't just invent a technology and park it over there and expect the world to, catch fire. You're the one that has to go do that. And so what I kind of realized there was I would have to go out there and understand how the system works, how those companies work, how to build those organizations. And, and starting Trell really was kind of a catalyst for me realizing that. And so, that hopefully 80-year-old me is looking back and thinking, well done, Leon, you made that difficult choice, and it really set us off on this whole different path. And I think that was the right decision. But hopefully 80-year-old Leon is also orbiting Saturn.
Wow. All right. Last question. If you had to choose an industry expert that you can have right now in your life, who would that person be? Or what field would they be from?
Yeah, that was the hardest question, I think. And I don't know, because there's always so much to learn from anyone. I always have a great sense of Sonder. Have you heard of, what I mean when I say Sonder?
Mm-hmm.
Where I know others might be listening. So Sonder is when you're stood in a crowd and you realize that everyone around you, every single one of them, lives a life just as complicated and intricate as yours, with all of your feelings and all of the people and all of your hopes and dreams. right? Everyone is infinitely complex as you are, and you might be in a crowd with thousands of people in it, right? And you look around and you just have this realization every one of them is as sort of nuanced as you. And so for everyone I meet, they all have these fantastic stories. They all have these fantastic learnings. So there's almost no one I find you can't meet, you can't learn something from. But right now, for what I'm trying to get done, I guess my interest is in standing up organizations and scaling them out, right? And obviously there are endless books and things like this and yada yada, but that is the area that I would love to meet experts, people who are building organizations and working to scale them out, and the very real problems that you encounter as that happens, and then what you do with that. That's probably the piece I would find, right now,
Wow.
most
I love
fascinating.
that. I love that. Well, thank you wholeheartedly for spending this 20 minutes with me. We enjoyed it. For everyone looking, Dr. Leon, or Leon, I shouldn't say, you said Leon. It's an absolute privilege, to be able to spend 5 hours with you and really co-create something. I think would be super cool.
Yeah, I
So
think so
thank
too.
you. And I know it's early morning for you, so I'm going to let you get back to having coffee and the baby and the cat.
Yeah, the babies and the cats have made sure I've been up for at least an hour or two at this point. But
Okay, have a great day,
all
Leon.
right, thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.